Another particularly dramatic moment during yesterday's testimony when Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal asked the Epstein survivors who were in that room to stand and then asked the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to apologize to them for the botched DOJ's handling of the file's release. Watch.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
that's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't she
question.
ask Merrick Garland this?
I am reclaiming my time, and when I reclaim my time, it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady's reclaimed her
I'm not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say this.
I'll direct it to
what
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is interrupted.
I'm not going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me
Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington joins us now. Congresswoman, what was going through your mind when that was how the Attorney General responded to your questions and the survivors?
You know what, Anna, what I really was stunned at is I gave her an opportunity to turn around on a very human level and as the head of DOJ and apologize right then and there to the survivors for what her Department of Justice had done. She could have taken that moment. It would have been very powerful had she actually issued that apology. But instead, she chose to try to confront me. I think she was flustered, thrown by my request that she turn around and apologize. She didn't want to do that because they never want to admit that they've done anything wrong, but this was clearly botched. And the harm to the survivors was irreparable. And that is why it was so important to bring them into the room and to have her take responsibility. And the fact that she just kept attacking and trying to change the subject, we knew she was going to do that because we watched her Senate hearing. But I do have to say, it was so incredibly cruel, dismissive, disrespectful of those survivors who were standing right there waiting for her apology. I don't care what she does to me or to other members of Congress other than the fact that she showed herself to be cruel and small and to have an audience of one, that was Donald Trump, not to be the people's Attorney General.
We know survivors in that room have told us that they have really been in pain since the release of all these documents because of the bad redactions, that so many of them and their identities were exposed. That's led to more traumatization. It's led to more traumatization. I know you've looked at the unredacted Epstein documents, and you highlighted a couple of them at this hearing. The DOJ has said that these redaction issues were the result of, quote, technical or human error. Do you buy it?
No, absolutely not. And one of the posters that I showed was of an email that was titled Epstein Victims List. And there were 32 names on that list. And if you wanted to say that perhaps there were, the list got missed and that's why the names weren't redacted, maybe that would have, been something you could believe, except, Anna, that one of the names was redacted. So clearly somebody looked at that document titled Epstein Victims List, couldn't have been clearer, and decided to only redact one name. At the same time, the other side of this is the pattern of redactions of very powerful people that were part of Epstein's, massive sex trafficking ring that were protected. Their names were redacted. And so I really wanted to show both parts of that and the harm that that does, because the survivors who I've had the privilege of spending time with, they are amazing, courageous women who are continuing to stand up despite re-traumatization. But they really want there to be full accountability, and instead what they're getting is what they've gotten since the beginning of this scandal. They're being told to shut up, sit down, and they believe that the deliberate unredaction of their names, the exposure of their names and information, is an attempt to intimidate other survivors from coming forward, because who's going to want their names to be put out there in this way? And that's a permanent harm, not something that can be fixed, even if the Justice Department goes back and redacts those names after the fact.
During your time questioning Bondi, a Getty photographer captured this image. I want to show it to our viewers. It's a page within Bondi's binder that she had with her. The top of the page we can see is titled Jayapal Pramila Search History, and appears to show multiple search items related to the Epstein files. And this now asks House Speaker Mike Johnson about this photo. Take a listen.
Jayapal sees the DOJ tracking her search history. Is that appropriate conduct?
I'm not going to comment on an allegation that is unsubstantiated. I don't know anything about that.
Attorney General Bondi testified, and she had a piece of paper that had Jayapal's search history in her binder of the Epstein files.
I don't know anything about that, and I'm not commenting on it. I haven't seen or heard anything about that.
Thank you,
But
sir.
that would be inappropriate if it happened.
Thank you.
I understand you spoke to the Speaker about this. What can you share?
Well, I can't share what we talked about, but I made it very clear that this existed, this document existed. There's a photograph of it from a photographer in the room. It was in Pam Bondi's binder. It matched up with the searches that I actually did put into the computers. And this idea that the DOJ is spying on members of Congress using our search history as part of her burn book, that was the binder full of Oppo research on every single one of us as members of Congress, is absolutely unacceptable. It's a violation of the separation of powers. And I told Mike that, and I'm not going to reveal what he said, but I am going to say that we are demanding an end to that surveillance and a new process where we are assured that the Department of Justice is not spying on any member, Republican or Democrat, that goes into that room to search those files. That is our legitimate lawmaking responsibility, and we should not be surveilled and have that information try to be used against us in these hearings.
We heard a lot of your Republican colleagues at this hearing complain about their cell phone toll records obtained by Jack Smith's January 6th investigation. Would you expect the same kind of outrage from them about this sort of thing?
Well, I don't know. Listen, Mike Johnson did say publicly that he thought it was unacceptable. Other Republicans have said that they don't think it's appropriate. I've come to not expect anything from this Republican Party, frankly, but I would hope that many of the Republicans that I've worked with on surveillance and privacy issues, on FISA, on so many other things, would speak up and say this is absolutely inappropriate. It has to stop, and the Department of Justice has to be held accountable. We need an investigation. What information did they collect? Why were they collecting it? How were they going to use it? Why was it in her binder? These are all questions that the American people deserve to have answered.
Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.